Redline Logbook here for another Danmachi video, and I will finally make that video about the relationship between Bell and Eyes. This video is pretty important because volume 21 of Danmachi and volume 16 of Sword are actually about to come out as of making of this video, so I should talk about the importance between their relationship. For most fans, their relationship is very one-sided, puppy love kind of thing, but that's because most fans only watch the anime, and this causes two problems. One, the anime only covers Danmachi, the main series doesn't cover any of the side stories, including Sword or any of the short stories that come out with novel releases. And second, the anime has a tendency to skip a lot, including things involving Bell and Eyes. They seem to do that a lot. But if you actually read all the light novels and all the short stories, you begin to realize that the relationship between them is actually a lot stronger and a lot more deep than the surface level that people seem to get. The first thing people don't seem to understand is Bell has genuine and undying love for Eyes. And yes, that's kind of proven out with Leia's freeze, but most people don't understand why. It's so powerful that it can even overcome a god's charm. And the reason for that is because when Bell was saved by Eyes, it fulfilled a fantasy that Bell has always had. Now, Bell was always supposed to be on the other end, the hero saving the girl from a monster and she falling in love with him, but that's not really the point. The point is, Bell saw in Eyes what he always desired to be, and that is to be a hero. Bell's grandfather installed in him that heroes are the coolest thing ever, that there's nothing better, there's nothing superior that you can be. The hero is the pinnacle. And so when he saw Eyes behaving in the manner of a hero, he saw his very fantasy realized. Not just the words on a page or a drawing in a book that his grandfather made. No. In real life, with his own eyes, he saw a hero. And because that hero just happened to be a beautiful woman, he immediately fell in love with her. Which is why Bell's love for her is so strong and unwavering. Because she isn't just a beautiful woman, she is the thing that Bell aspires to be himself. That's Bell's first impression. Now for Eyes' first impression of Bell. She did not fall in love with him at first sight, obviously. What she saw was a pure white light, something that she wished she had still. You see, Eyes grew up as the daughter of a hero, Albert Wallenstein, and when she was a little girl, Albert told her that one day she will find her hero that will save her, just like he found her mother. This here is Eyes at her most pure, her most uncorrupted period, right before tragedy struck and she was driven into despair. Because of that, Eyes very much has like two parts of her personality. One that she refers to as the dark flame, which is constantly consuming her with hatred and anger and the desire to kill everything monster. And the other is that innocence that she had as a child, that part of her that she wishes she could go back to, but she knows she can't. And when she saw Bell, she saw that. She saw that innocence she could never go back to. Once again, she didn't fall in love with Bell at this moment, but it was still something special in the back of her head that she couldn't understand. In fact, the night after she saved Bell, she actually had two dreams. The first one was back when she was that innocent little girl with her parents, and the second was when she was an innocent little girl running around playing with a white rabbit. The second major moment in their relationship happens literally the day after Bell is saved by Eyes. It is at the Hostess of Fertility when Bell is there eating and drinking while the Loki Familia enters. Now, Bell's perspective on the matter was one of realization and heartbreak. So, Bet gets super drunk and he starts making fun of Bell, calling him Tomato Boy after he got splattered with the blood of a minotaur when I saved him, and basically just humiliating him in front of everyone about how weak and pathetic he was. Right before Bet did this, Bell was actually about to confess his love to Eyes and ask her out. But when he heard all this, and he realized just how pathetic he was viewed by literally everyone in the bar, he now understood he had no right to ask out Eyes. He had no right to stand by her in any way, shape, or form, because he was just too weak to do so. And so this is where Bell dedicates himself to become stronger, to one day stand next to Eyes as an equal, so he can properly confess his love to her. After this, Leia's freeze actually goes into overdrive, and this is the moment in time where Bell's growth accelerates at an absurd rate. Because now Bell isn't just memorized by Eyes as a hero, he now wants to be a hero next to her. Now, Eyes' perspective on this whole thing was, well, first off, when Bet asked her, if that little twerp came up to you and asked you to go out with him, what would your answer be? And Eyes wasn't able to give an answer because Eyes would have said no. She had to have said no because Eyes' goal is to kill the one-eyed black dragon. And so any man that stands next to her has to be strong enough to do that, to fight alongside her. And Belle just isn't that, at least Belle at that moment. So Eyes at this moment, once again, did not see Belle in a romantic way, but she was extremely angered at everything Bet was saying at this moment, because while Belle wasn't a great warrior at this moment, he did remind her of that beautiful light that she wished she could go back to. And Eyes at the moment then realizes that she actually wanted to protect that light, protect that purity, and basically try to make amends with Belle because she felt like she did something wrong. From here on out, Eyes would consistently try to apologize to Belle for scaring him back when she saved him from the Minotaur. Once again, this is all in Eyes' head. Belle has no fear of Eyes whatsoever. The next 2 moments for their relationship is actually solely on Eyes' perspective, where she sees him after he's killed the silverback that was going after his goddess Hestia, and right after Lily betrayed him, and she held him out with the orcs. Both of these moments in time was when Eyes really began to notice Belle, and not just as this white light that she wanted to apologize to, but actually someone who is strong. Reason for that is because it was only about a week after Eyes saved Belle that he killed the silverback. He shouldn't have been able to do that. And so this is when Eyes begins to realize, okay, Belle is a fast learner. That's pretty good. That's great. But it wasn't until I saw him fighting against all of those orcs after Lily betrayed him, when he started to fire off Firebolt over and over again and cutting down all the orcs, that she realized he isn't just growing fast, he's growing at an absurd rate. And at this moment, Eyes then realized there's something he's doing that I want to know. I want to learn from him. The reason for this is because Eyes wants to get stronger. That is her entire goal in life, is to become stronger. And she sees Belle as the key in doing that. This leads to the next big moment in their relationship, Eyes training Belle. From Belle's perspective, this is the best thing ever because now he gets to spend time with the person he idolizes the most, but he then learns there's actually more to it than just that. First off, Eyes has a bunch of little quirks, one of them being the fact that she's kind of an airhead. And 2, what Belle can learn from her, fighting style-wise, is actually very useful for him to getting stronger, and so he actually generally sees Eyes as a master. Now, he never really refers to her as that, but she's the woman he primarily thinks about when he trains. And he actually thinks fondly of all of the techniques and moves that he has been taught by her. And so he gains even more respect for Eyes, and his love for her deepens. On Eyes' perspective, she realized she was kind of being a little self-centered. When she decided to ask him to train, her one and only goal was to basically learn how he became stronger so fast, so then she can learn how to do it. But as she's training him, she then realizes just how earnest he is and how genuine he is trying to learn from her and take in everything that he can. And she begins to actually want to train him, actually get him stronger, actually make sure she can teach him everything she can. And so she actually begins to ask for advice on how to train people from the people who trained her, Finn, Garth, Riveria. During this training, she legitimately begins to see herself as Belle's master, and that it is her duty to make him as strong as possible, not just herself. At the same time, she actually begins to feel a little guilty about training Belle, because that white light that she sees inside of him, she sees it glow even brighter the more time she spends with him. And she realizes, or at least what she believes, is that that white light needs to die if you want to become truly strong, if you truly want to become an adventurer. And the reason why she believes that is because that's what happened to her. That's what happened to the Amazon sisters based on their backstory. That's what happened to Finn for his backstory. That's basically what happened to everyone that she knows, is that the part of them that's always glowing, the part of them that wants to be a true hero, dies. And what's left is a warrior, bathed in blood. And she doesn't really want that for Belle. What she wants is for him just to be a normal guy and to stay the way he is. And so there's a conflict in her thought process where she wants him to get stronger because she's his master now, but she also doesn't want him to reach the point where he has to go into the darkness to become stronger. And so she basically just wants him to cut off his growth right before the edge and just stay there. That is when we get to the next big moment, Belle fighting the Minotaur. Now, for Belle, this has nothing to do with Eyes. This is reaffirming his dream he got from his grandfather about becoming a hero. But for Eyes, this is the moment where she basically falls in love with Belle. She doesn't realize it just yet, but she does. And to explain why she falls in love is the whole thing about how she doesn't want Belle to cross that threshold into darkness to become stronger. So when Eyes shows up to finally save Belle from the Minotaur the second time, she says to him, "You did well. I'll save you now." Now this is where Belle, of course, starts thinking in his head, wait, I'm going to be saved again from Eyes? I can't let that happen. But what's happening inside of Ai's head is, wow, you really did well. I'm proud of you for being able to survive this long so I could save you. And she generally was happy that Bell was able to do what he did. And then she was going to kill the Minotaur and move on. But Bell started getting up. Now, for Eyes, this scared her. This made her feel like she was going to lose everything. Because at this moment, she thought Bell was now giving into what she refers to as the Black Flame. He was giving into the darkness to become stronger, to overcome this moment, to kill this monster that he hates. And she was actually about to stop him from getting back up to finish this fight with the Minotaur. But before she could do that, Bell yells out, "I will not be saved by Eyes Wallenstein again. Never again. This is my adventure." And when he says that, Eyes looks into his eyes, and there is no hatred, there is no anger, there is no darkness like there is in her eyes when she fights monsters. He's still as bright and is still as pure as ever. And when he walks past Eyes to fight the Minotaur, she once again reaches out to stop him, but at that moment, she sees the back of her father, deposed on the back of Bell. And at that moment, that's when she really does fall in love with Bell. Not because he is like her father. No. It's because Bell, in her eyes, at that moment, is what a true hero should be. Her father, Albert Wallenstein, was the greatest hero ever, but he was also a pure, good man who did what was right, who took care of his wife, took care of his daughter, and fought to protect the world. Eyes has never met a man like that since. No one in the Loki Familia, not herself, not any of the Ventures, because like I said, every single one of them, whenever they want to push past their limits, they have to go into the darkness to do it. Belle is the first man since her father she saw someone stay pure, stay white, and move forward. Belle is the closest thing to a hero she's seen in a long time. And this is no minor thing, meeting a hero for Eyes, because, as I said before, her father told her that Eyes would one day meet her own hero that would save her. And that is the individual that Eyes has been looking for her entire life, ever since the tragedy of losing both her father and mother from the one-eyed black dragon. Eyes was alone, she was scared, she had nothing left, and no one came and saved her. And so the thing that Eyes desires most in this world is for someone to save her. Eyes is waiting for a hero. The next thing in their relationship is actually Eyes finding Belle after him, Welf, and Lily were able to survive the middle floors and made it to the 18th floor. Here, it's more like little things between Belle and Eyes, where Eyes is very concerned about his safety. She's there watching over him. You had that whole peeping scene, but before that peeping scene happened, thanks to Hermes, Hestia actually mentions how she doesn't want to smell bad in front of Belle, and this is probably the first time Eyes has ever really concerned herself with smelling bad in front of someone who she considers a comrade, because she actually smells herself in front of Belle and actually slowly moves away from him just in case she stinks from all the sweat. Now, at this point in their relationship, the two of them are clearly, one is madly in love and the other is starting to fall in love, but they are just distinctly connected to each other because the two are constantly finding excuses to actually spend time with each other. For example, once in a side story, Eyes actually recruits Belle to help solve the mystery of a ghost. There was no ghost, it was actually false. But the point is, she trusted Belle over anyone else. The reason for this is because Eyes is scared of ghosts because she can't use her sword to kill them, because you can't kill a ghost with a sword. And so she didn't want to show that weakness to anyone, but she was willing to show it to Belle. Then there was the time at the big party at the Apollo Familias, where Belle and Eyes actually wanted to have a conversation with each other, they wanted to spend time with each other, but because of their goddesses' hatred for each other, they were pulled apart. They both did look back at that moment, but once again, they had to listen to their goddesses. Fortunately, Hermes was there to set up a situation where the two could have a dance, showing that Eyes is at her most comfortable with Belle, because she's had many men ask her out, and I'm sure she had many men at that party even try to ask her for a dance, but she rejected all of them. And if you're wondering why didn't she just then immediately reject Hermes at that very moment, is because Hermes is a god, and being disrespectful to a god is kind of a no-no. Which is why she was actually looking at Loki hoping she would notice what was happening. Loki didn't notice anything. She got into a second fight with Hestia over something. At this point in the story, the two of them are basically de facto friends. The problem is, they can't really spend time together because of the friction between the two familias, and the two will actually hang out in secret, hiding the fact that they are spending time together from anyone else in the Familia. The only person who seems to ever figure it out is Leafia, because Leafia. If you don't know what that means, just read the light novels or the manga and you'll understand Leafia very well. As I said before, because the two of them now have to spend time in secret together, whenever the Hestia Familia was attacked by the Apollo Familia, Eyes immediately ran to go help, but she couldn't because she was immediately stopped by Finn. With that being said, because she did it in secret, in quotations, because Finn and the rest knew about it, she was able to train Belle with Fiona's help for the war game against Apollo. In the next moment, we actually get to see Eyes' jealousy of Belle. So this takes place in Daedalus Street, where Eyes is with the rest of the girls of the Loki Familia, searching for a door to Noxus. Eventually, this leads to the girls to start talking about love. They all discuss who they're in love with, none really important to the story, but eventually, that's when Belle just shows up. He was running from the pleasure quarters because he was being chased down by all of the Amazons who were trying to do things. This was after the night he spent with Haruhime talking about different stories. And after she showed him the exit then led to Daedalus Street, but Daedalus Street is a maze, and so he got lost. And so he tagged along with the ladies to help him guide his way out to freedom. Now, eventually, this leads to Belle basically being exposed that he was in the pleasure quarter. And the reason for that is because there are animal people within the Loki Familia, and they can smell the perfume and other stuff on him that indicates that he's been in the pleasure quarters. On top of that, in his pocket, he still has the aphrodisiac that Hermes gave him. And so a series of misunderstandings happened to the point where Eyes basically assumes that Belle was in the pleasure quarters and was sleeping with women, and this makes her very angry. The ladies, after basically either criticizing him or saying that, hey, guys have needs. That's just how it works out sometimes. All the ladies have their own views of the whole situation. Eventually, they start talking about romance and relationships. And eventually, someone finally goes back to, hey, Eyes, you haven't told us what your kind of guy is. And Eyes, as loudly as possible, without shouting, basically says, I don't like the kind of men that stay out all night in the pleasure quarters. This breaks Belle's heart and basically turns him into a slug at that moment. If it wasn't for Tiona noticing the situation and wanting to patch things up between him and Eyes. Okay, speaking of Tiona, she seems to be the only individual who understands that there's a love thing between Belle and Eyes, because she realizes there's a love thing between her and Belle. And she actually not full out stated it, but basically said that if Belle ever gets into a relationship, it would be her and Eyes and Belle. That's basically how Tiona sees it, which is why Tiona decides to help out Belle in this situation with Eyes, because she feels that Eyes is the only other woman that can be with Belle. Okay, so now we finally get to one of the bigger moments, and that is the kidnapping of Hestia by Rakia. This leads to Belle and Eyes going to rescue her, and the two end up in a small village in the mountains. Here in this small little village, while they're waiting for Hestia to get better, enough to actually go back to Aurorio, Belle and Eyes basically play house, in a sense, where the two basically do normal everyday jobs you would do in day-to-day life. Make dinner together, clean together. They always train together, and of course, they help out at the upcoming festival that the town is about to have. It's a really nice moment for these two to spend time together that isn't either in secret or super stressful because they're constantly trying to fight or train or whatever. The two can finally do what they've been wanting to do for a while, which is just spend time together. And eventually, we get the scene where Belle then asks Eyes to dance at the festival, but Hestia then cuts in and she dances with Eyes instead. This angered a lot of people who either read or watched the anime. But even so, this still had a lasting moment for Eyes, because after they got back, Eyes, in her regular morning training routine, she starts actually performing the folk dance that she was doing with Hestia, and she was actually imagining Hestia dancing with her. And at a certain point, Hestia disappears, and what's before her is the image of Belle, and she starts dancing with him in her head, showing that this is when Eyes starts to really think about Belle, even if someone else doesn't bring him up, or he isn't mentioned, or he doesn't show his face, or whatever. It's just her by herself. She will start thinking of Belle. So now we have all this great build-up happening between the two of them. The relationship is really working. It's really moving forward. And then the Zeno arc happens. And this is where everything just collides in on itself. The beginning of this chasm, let's just say, between the two of them, is when Belle has this big interaction with Ween, and eventually he just happens to run into Eyes. She noticed that he's down, and she wants to understand what he's going through. He can't really talk about it, but he does ask her, what would you do if a monster could feel like you or me? And her only response is, well, if a monster ever made someone cry, I would kill it. Belle didn't want to hear that answer. This breaks him inside, realizing that for this situation, he can't really rely on Eyes like he always does. And when Eyes notices this, she feels like there's now this giant gap separating the two of them, and she doesn't understand why. After this conversation, the next time these two see each other is actually in Daedalus Street, when Ween is going mad and Finn pins her down with his spear. Eyes doesn't notice Ween at first. What she notices is Bell and the absolute dread on his face at seeing the Loki Familia. And she actually sees the chasm between them widen even further. And she begins to realize the situation long before anyone else does, long before even Finn does. And it sickens her, and she wishes this chasm would close. And when Bell says, "This weaver is mine," now in Danmachi, everyone is confused, and then I says, "Well, you can't take someone else's kill." And obviously Bet says, that's shit that belongs in the dungeon. You don't do that here in the streets. We actually get Ai's perspective on that in Sword Oratoria. When I said that, she was just throwing out any rationalization that she could think of for herself. Because she knew the truth at that moment. She'd already figured out why Belle was behaving the way she was, but she didn't want to admit the truth. She wanted to separate Belle from the situation as much as possible. And so she was willing just to deny reality. And that's where we get to the night of the escape, where now the Loki Familia are hunting the Zenos, and the Hestia Familia is trying to get them back into the dungeon through Noxus. Eyes volunteers to watch Bell. Now, Finn assumes that Eyes wants to go easy on Bell and watch out for him in this situation. He's not entirely wrong, but she ensures him that she can do her job. And the reason why is because the way she's looking out for Bell isn't to try to help him fix his reputation or whatever from the monsters. No, her goal is to basically forcibly separate Bell from the Zenos, so this way he doesn't have to be stained with monster. At this point, Aiza's psyche is breaking, and she does not believe that something as filthy as a monster should be anywhere near something as pure and as great as Bell. This is an extremely important point because when they actually have to confront each other and fight over Ween, Eyes trying to kill her and Bell trying to protect her, this is the moment that really crushes both of them. It starts off with Eyes not wanting to fight Bell at all, and actually rushing past her with her superior speed as a level 6, because he's still level 3 at this time, to basically cut Ween down in an instant. But fortunately for Bell, he has Lightning Bolt. This stuns and shocks both of them. One, Bell fired magic at the person he loves, the person he idolizes the most in this world. He questions if he's gone mad, and Eyes is generally surprised that Bell would actually attack her. Like a legit attack that was meant to maim or hurt her. They start fighting. Bell is getting his ass kicked. Eyes is still going easy on him. She only hits him with the flat of her blade so she doesn't cause any actual injuries. Bell, not understanding Eyes' past, is wondering why he can't get through to her, why they are just resorting to screaming at each other at a certain point. He generally just doesn't understand why she won't listen about Ween and the other Zenos, and there's nothing he can do to stop her. And Eyes, she's now being consumed by the dark flame that's inside of her. Even Chibi Eyes, the little kid version of her, is beginning to question why she's doing this. If it's really okay to hurt Bell, is it okay to go this far just to kill some monster? At this point, Eyes is already aware that Bell is special to her, that Bell matters more to her than anyone else. She doesn't realize it's love still, but this is breaking her heart. The more she fights Bell, the more she basically beats him down just to kill a monster. But her hatred for monsters is still consuming her, and she's listening to that over her, love for Bell. Eventually, the fighting escalates to the point where Eyes is now just threatening to actually cut Bell with the blade of her sword. And right before she crosses that line and does something that she could never take back, never forgive herself for, that's when Ween shows up, and she does that whole thing about basically promising never to hurt anyone ever again, wanting to be with Bell, breaking off her own claws, ripping off her own wing, basically to prove to Eyes that Ween is not a monster. She is a person who can be with Bell. Now, from Bell's perspective, this seems like Eyes is feeling empathy towards Ween and finally understands the situation, but that's not what's happening. Instead, at this moment, Eyes is ungodly jealous of Ween because Ween is just like Eyes was when she was a kid. She was lost. She was in a situation that was unbearable. Darkness was closing in on her, the pain, the suffering. But unlike Eyes, Ween had someone to come for her. A hero came to save her, something that didn't happen for Eyes. And this basically just shatters Eyes at this moment, and so she just gives up. And that's why she lets Bell and Ween go. And this is where Eyes is basically at her lowest. She looks up to the sky, begging for someone to save her, begging for her hero. Her chibi version has basically abandoned her, refusing to even look at her. All she has left is the black flame and just endless darkness and pain. This would have been the end of Eyes as a person if it wasn't for the lifeline that Belle gives her after the Zeno arc. The two, basically brokenhearted by the fact that they hurt the person they care about the most, on sheer desperation, the two of them head to the top of the wall where they train, hoping to see each other. And this is a big deal because this basically heals Belle at that moment, because he realizes Eyes doesn't really hate him truly, and this was just a moment in time that was bad for the two of them, but they're able to get past it together. Eyes still is consumed by the black flame, her cheaper self has still abandoned her, but seeing that Belle is there and wanting to make up and continue training together is the lifeline Eyes needed at that moment. She's still in the darkness, but she can see the light. So at this moment, Belle is reinvigorated. He's ready to continue on trying to get stronger so he can stand up next to Eyes as his equal and basically ask her to, be his woman. And so Belle continues to push forward. Eyes also decides to push forward, but once again, she's still being consumed by the black flame, and where she's going is in a very bad direction. She is going further and further into darkness. This all culminates to the point where she is in her duel with Revis, her final fight, and Eyes just allows her entire being to be consumed with her hatred by the black flame. She does the thing that she didn't want Belle to do back when he fought against the Minotaur for the first time. She allows herself to cross the line to become stronger. And so in this duel with Revis to the death, she is literally ripping her own body apart. She's combining her skill Revenger with her wind, creating the Black Wind. This is a technique that literally destroys her body from the inside out. After this fight, our mid actually told Eyes that she now has permanent damage to her bones, and there is nothing she can do to fix it. So Eyes was on a path that was going to kill her. Even if she somehow won this duel and survived, she would continue to do what she's doing here, allowing herself to be consumed by her hatred, her anger, the dark flame, and this would eventually kill her. And no one was able to help her at this moment. Not Leafia, who is currently going through her issues with Philvis. In fact, this actually encouraged Eyes to actually give into her desire for revenge even greater. Reveria, basically her adopted mother, couldn't help her. No one else in her familia, no one else she cared about or loved, were able to pull her out of this suicidal mentality. That is, until she heard the ringing of the bells. The ringing of Belle's Argonaut skill. She immediately recognized it at that moment, and that little chain of hope that Belle gave her back after the Zeno fight, that basically latched onto her and pulled her out of the darkness at that moment. Just knowing Belle was there, not talking to him, not seeing him, just knowing that he was around her at that moment when she was at her worst, that saved her. That pulled her out of the darkness, and Eyes then immediately stopped using Revenger with her wind. She promised herself and everyone around her that she would actually never use it again, at least in that combination. After she defeats Revis, she then goes searching for Belle. She finds him unconscious after the battle. She decides to lie next to him, lean against him, go to sleep next to him. And at that moment, that is when Eyes finally admits to herself that she's in love with Belle. She finally realizes she's in love with him. This is the moment when she decides she wants Belle to be her hero. He isn't just yet, but he's the one. He's the one that her father promised her when she was a little girl. Belle is the man that Eyes has been waiting for over 1,000 years. And so, finally, after 20 volumes of Danmachi and 15 of Sword of Hortoria, starting in volumes 21 of Danmachi and 16 of Sword of Hortoria, Eyes will finally have her dream fulfilled. She will finally have her hero come for her. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, give a thumbs up so you enjoy more Danmachi and other things. Thank you, and have a great day.